It was a dark and stormy night in London. A woman's life was in peril. She sprinted through the rain, her feet slapping against the wet pavement, desperately trying to escape the unknown forces terrorizing the city. She has been running for 2 hours. How it all started, she remembered taking her usual evening walk when all of a sudden she heard a big bang. As she turned towards the direction of the noise, she heard the sound occurring simultaneously all around her. Her heart started racing. As she too covered behind a tree close to her, she saw numerous houses collapsing into huge rubbles. "Oh my God, what is happening?" Her heart pounded. She began to run, but as she ran she saw that the catastrophe was going on. "Are my family safe? Oh, where are they? Were they able to escape?" All this thought went through her mind as she ran. "Oh Lord, save and protect them," she prayed, her heart racing with fear. The rain started falling and drenched her, but she paid no heed as she ran, her mind occupied with the safety of her husband and child. On either side of her, the corpses of men and women lay strewn, victims of the mysterious threat that had befallen the city. She reached a corner only to be confronted by a massive building, her view obstructed. As she turned, a wall of water, towering as high as the building itself, came crashing down, threatening to engulf her. She spun around and fled in the direction from which she had come. By now, her thoughts were blank. All she knew was that she had to run, but to where she did not know. Panic-stricken, she ran, each step echoing with a sense of desperation. Then, as hope seemed to wane, from a distance, she saw a figure approaching. When she got closer, it was her husband, running towards her, their baby safe in a stroller. "Dear, turn back! There's a huge body of water coming," she shouted. Without hesitation, she grabbed her husband's arm, pulling him along as they continued their frantic escape. Together, they navigated the chaotic streets, dodging debris and fallen trees and structures. The cries of survivors, the wailing of the wounded, and the roar of the mysterious forces filled the air. Amid the chaos, as they ran and came to an open field, a figure emerged. It was Father Michael, a holy priest, who was moving through the city with a crucifix in one hand and holy water in the other, confronting the evil and looking out to see survivors to rescue them. The woman with her husband and baby ran towards Father Michael. His crucifix gleamed in the darkness. He embraced them. "Do not fear, my children," he said. "You are safe now. The Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary will protect us. Follow me." Father Michael led the way, and together they fled through the treacherous streets. The full extent of the destruction was laid bare before them, but as they neared the church, they noticed something remarkable. The church stood intact, untouched by the surrounding devastation. Finally, they entered the church, where Father Michael led them to safety. As they caught their breath, the woman turned to her husband and baby, tears of relief streaming down her face. "We made it," she whispered. "We're alive." After a moment, the woman looked at the priest. "Father, what happened? How is this place intact? What is your secret?" Father Michael's face softened with understanding. "I received a revelation and have been warning people for a long time to repent and put their trust in God by consecrating themselves to the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary. These are the means God promised to protect anyone from danger, but few listened. I have been searching. You are the only survivors I have found so far." The woman suddenly remembered that their family too had consecrated themselves to the two hearts of love. "That explains it," she said, her voice trembling. "That monstrous storm could have consumed us. That short prayer saved us." "That is the fruit of obeying God," the priest said gently. "I'm glad both of you are saved now. But remember to thank the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary for their protection. Also, continue to live a life that pleases God. Only then will you truly be safe, not just from the forces of evil that seek to destroy us all, but also from eternal damnation." "Sure, Father. And I wonder what tomorrow will be like," the husband said. "Oh, by tomorrow it will be over. The spirit of death is just for tonight, though it has caused so much havoc already." The husband and wife looked at each other. then at their baby who whimpered. They all knew that their lives, and those of other survivors, would never be the same, but they were grateful to be alive. They felt grateful to have been rescued, not just from the physical danger, but also from the spiritual darkness that had threatened to consume them. Later, as they knelt in the church at prayer, holding each other's hand, they knew they would always hold on to the faith that had saved them and given them the strength to overcome even the most daunting challenges. At the same time, they worried about the coming days. What would it look like? How would they navigate life with so many dangers and changes? Only time will tell. The next day, the woman stirred, the sound of rain still falling outside. Memories of the previous night's terror rushed back, and she quickly sat up in bed. She glanced to her right. Her husband was still sleeping, and their baby was nestled soundly between them. Quietly, she slipped out of bed and stepped into the corridor. The church was eerily silent except for her breathing and the distant pattern of rain. Father Michael was nowhere to be seen. Driven to understand their situation, she walked towards the exit door. "I need to see what's happening outside," she whispered to herself. As she touched the doorknob, a loud, indistinct murmuring reached her ears. She turned around but saw no one. Her heart pounded as she retreated from the door, deciding to approach the window instead. Carefully, she shifted the window blind and peered out. Her breath caught in her throat. A monstrous cyclone, swirling with debris and lifeless bodies, passed by. Thousands of them moved in a grotesque procession, like a nightmarish parade of death. Her heart raced. The sight was horrifying, beyond anything she had ever imagined. For a moment, she feared the cyclone might tear the church apart. But then she noticed something strange. The cyclone moved as if guided by unseen hands, steering clear of the church, its destruction directed away from them. The night before, she, her husband, and Father Michael had pondered how the city's debris would be cleared, given the extent of the disaster. Now it seemed as if a mysterious force was at work, removing the remnants of the catastrophe. By now, her husband and Father Michael had joined her at the window, their faces pale as they took in the real scene. They stood in silence, watching the cyclone sweep the ruins and lifeless forms from the city streets. "We're witnessing a divine intervention," Father Michael finally said, his voice calm. "The hand of God is at work, cleansing the land." The woman turned to him, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and relief. "But what does this mean for us?" "It means," Father Michael replied, "that we are under divine protection. The evil forces that sought to destroy us have been vanquished, and their aftermath is being swept away, but we must remain vigilant and faithful." She pondered what Father said, but her mind was struggling to take it all in, and then she remembered the locust plague in Egypt and what happened thereafter. "That is it," she said aloud. "That's what?" her husband asked. All eyes were now on her. "The Lord changed the wind into a very strong west wind, which lifted the locusts and drove them into the Red Sea. Not a single locust was left in all the country of Egypt," she said. "Oh, you remembered this verse in the Bible?" Father asked. "Yes, when I was younger, we were made to memorize it. What you said now made sense." As the morning light struggled to pierce through the storm clouds, the three of them were now seated. By then, the cyclone had dissipated, leaving the streets cleaner than they had been. And the rain had stopped, and a tentative calm settled over the city. "What do we do now?" the woman said, turning to Father Michael and her husband. Father Michael took a deep breath. "We will first look around to see what is left, how many survivors, and we can then plan what next, how to continue to survive and rebuild. We will use this church as a beacon of hope and sanctuary in the days to come, but all still depend on what we shall discover." Her husband nodded in agreement. The woman, her strength bolstered by the divine intervention she had witnessed, embraced her husband and their baby. "We will rebuild," she said with newfound determination. "We will be a light in this darkness." Later that day, the rain ceased, and rays of sunlight began to break through the clouds. The survivors emerged from the church, greeted by a city transformed. Though the streets were clear, the scars of the disaster remained. Buildings lay in ruins, and the air was heavy with the smell of damp earth and broken stone. The woman and her family, led by Father Michael, ventured into the streets to help those in need. They offered food, shelter, and words of comfort to the shell-shocked survivors who had lost everything. Slowly, hope began to return to the people. Together, they began the daunting task of rebuilding their city, their faith and resilience shining through the ruins. As evening approached, the woman stood with her family on the steps of the church, watching as the survivors started to clear debris and rebuild their lives. She knew that their journey was just beginning, but with faith and perseverance, they would overcome the challenges ahead. Holding her baby close, she whispered a silent prayer of thanks. They had been saved, not only from the physical destruction but also from the spiritual darkness that had threatened to consume them. And as the sun set on their ravaged city, she felt a glimmer of hope for the future. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please subscribe and leave a comment for more Christian-based stories like this. Remember, one act of kindness and a prayer can change the world. See you in our next story. Bye.